So out of the blue, my husband decides to pay for my sister's college, but things aren't adding up here. They don't even have a close relationship, but the key to this all is he is a flirt. And I can't help but wonder, is he flirting with my sister? There is some groundbreaking evidence I'm about to share with you guys right now. My husband, Peter, he made the most absurd proposal to me this morning to sell the house given to us a decade ago by my grandmother. I thought he was joking at first, but when he started talking about living on less than $1,500 a month, I knew for a fact that he was as serious as anybody could get. And I had had enough. Peter had been acting strangely for months now, spending unnecessarily without practical any reasons, while ignoring the fact that we're already struggling financially. At first, I told myself that I had no control over his money when he began to contribute close to nothing to the bills, but we'd have several arguments afterward, none of them ending in my or our favor. This was the last straw, though I've made a promise to myself to find out what caused Peter to lose his mind. I found something out this evening which prompted me to write this post. I'm 34, female, and I've been married to Peter for a little over 10 years, right? Yeah, things aren't working out in our favor, and Peter's attitude toward our financial situation is absolutely baffling. But it has not always been this way. Back then, he was in charge of the finances, and I helped out with as little as I could as a secretary. I didn't mind it because I really liked my job and had an amazing boss, and Peter was happy with a wife that would be around as soon as he got back from work. My widowed grandmother had given us a house a year after marriage, opting to return to her hometown to stay with a friend. I got used to not seeing her at some point, and despite the fondness that Peter and I felt toward her, we were quite happy with her gift to us. Unfortunately, the company he worked for faced a huge loss and he was let go. We survived on our savings for a few months, but the struggles began soon after, and with those struggles came marital problems. So, I've had little to no problems with Peter, despite being married to him for a decade, or at least. I can't recall having any serious problems with him, and I've had friends that did not like Peter so much because he was a bit of a Casanova. Despite being a married man, when we started dating, there were times when he reminded me of, well, how much of a little teenage boy he was. But I got over it very, very quickly because it just stopped when he got serious with me. Though after marriage, he would playfully flirt with a waitress or wink at a woman in her late 20s on occasion. I knew it was nothing because I've never once suspected him of cheating. If he was, well, he was very good at hiding it, darn good. And I'm pretty perceptive. I knew that Peter was the flirty type when I married him, so whenever I caught him doing something like that, I'd just blame it on bad habits. We would always laugh about the ladies' reaction to his flirting a lot, and them had calling him a pervert before going to bed, and Peter often commented that he was so blessed to have a wife that did not easily get jealous. I was not a big fan of his actions, correct, but I trusted my husband no matter how weird he was. Now, that might cause permanent problems in other people's relationship and marriages, but not mine. Any problem I had with my husband got resolved in just a few days. But for the past 6 months, it's been one complaint or another because he was spending excessively. And the worst part of it was that he knew I was right but refused to do anything about it. I was slowly losing my mind until something popped up while I was alone with my thoughts in the evening. My younger sister, Nicole, 20 years old, female, came over some days ago and asked if, well, I could help with her college fees. She had squandered the money that had given to her by mother, and knowing my parents, Nicole was not going to get a dime from them if she asked. I wasn't even sure they knew about her wasteful spending, but that was not really my major concern. I told Nicole that she could not expect anything from either my husband or myself because we were not in the position to help. And after some persuasion and begging on her part, she left disappointed. Now, the problem with that story was when I told my husband, who had been absent during Nicole's visit, about it. I'd expected him to express his concern, sure, but not to the point where he started asking why I had dismissed my sister's request so casually. I tried explaining that it was hard for me to do so, but that I could not do anything to help out because we needed to help ourselves out. Besides, she was given the money and had simply spent it all. Who's to say that she would not do the exact same thing if I ended up helping her? Well, it led to another argument that day, and Peter left. It was shocking because not once had he walked out on me during a fight. Was I being that unresponsible, I thought to myself. When he returned, there was an awkward tension in the air, and it was there until this morning when he began to make small talk. I was glad that things were finally okay, but then Peter just had to ask to sell the house. I put on a smile and said, I'd think about it. Acting like it was a perfectly normal question, that was until I was rummaging through his stuff as soon as I got back from work, looking for something that could explain my husband's behavior. You did not just wake up and decide to sell your home, I thought. Something was definitely amiss. After going through a couple of files in his closet, I found a small jewelry box. Initially, I thought it was a present to me, but the earrings had too many stones on them and were way too flashy. Peter knew better than to get me something like that, and it seemed like something teenagers would die for. I think it was at that exact moment that my mind wandered toward Nicole. I'm not sure why at that moment I thought of my sister of all people and not some random stranger, but it would explain Peter's attitude earlier on when I told him about Nicole's visit. Was the jewelry meant to cheer her up? Or was there something else going on? Perhaps it was another person he had gotten the gift for, but it did not really make that much of a difference, since it wasn't mine. Yeah, I know what a lot of people might be thinking, but I would not let my mind go in that direction. Peter came home and fell asleep immediately, so I did not get the chance to even ask who the jewelry was for. I'll do so as soon as he wakes up tomorrow. Right now, I just want to know what anyone would do in my shoes. Alright guys, I have some wild comments for you after the original post. I mean, people were arguing in the comment section like crazy about this one. Here is 4 comments, and let me know downstairs in our comment section which of these commenters makes the most sense. Comment number 1. Seriously, he's acting so strange. I mean, spending recklessly. When you guys are already struggling and then has the audacity to ask you to sell the house, OP, you deserve to know what's going on, especially since the house was a gift from your grandmother. I'm sending you strength and courage. Trust your gut and do not let him get away with any suspicious behavior. Comment number 2. Red flags everywhere. First, the excessive spending, then the sudden desire to sell the house, and now mystery jewelry. I'm sorry, OP, you don't need to jump to conclusions, but you definitely need answers. And honestly, it sounds like Peter, has changed, and not for the better. I hope you find clarity soon. Comment number 3. You went through his personal stuff without his knowledge. That's a breach of trust, no matter the circumstance. I mean, yeah, Peter's acting weird, but snooping is not the way to deal with problems in a marriage. Communication is, girl. Comment number 4. Okay, let's be real here. You're assuming a lot. It's not unheard of for people to go through rough patches. Maybe Peter is struggling emotionally or mentally, and you're not giving him the benefit of the doubt. Everyone deserves a chance to explain. So, as you can see, not all the commenters are seeing eye to eye on this story. I do have some exciting updates for you, and if you guys are enjoying this story so far, hit the subscribe button for daily videos, and let's jump into the first update. I waited for Peter to get up. Partly because I was extremely curious and partly because I was so restless I could not get enough sleep. I expected him to ask why I went through his things, but he sighed, then apologized for keeping secrets from me. He had gotten the jewelry for a female friend with the hopes of getting her to help out with a job interview that he was interested in. I calmed down immediately, scolded myself for doubting Peter in the first place, and I apologized for invading his privacy, then joked that it was too expensive and would probably be tasteless to a woman who was about my age. He assured me that this was not the case, as the woman in question was a lover of expensive things. Everything was finally okay in my house, and Peter and I were back to talking to each other about everything, but somewhere deep within me, I knew there was a problem. The next day, when we were in bed, Peter got up to a phone call. Normally, I would not find it suspicious, but when I saw him looking nervously, before exiting the room, that gnawing feeling resurfaced, and I waited patiently for the call to end and asked why he left with such urgency. He laughed and told me it was all in my head before kissing me goodnight and going to bed. I could not go to sleep that night, and for the first time in my marriage, I took my husband's phone, only to find out that Nicole was the last person he spoke to. The time of the call matched perfectly, so I could not give my husband the benefit of the doubt even if I wanted to. After thinking it through, I came to a conclusion that whatever Peter was hiding from me was related to Nicole, and he probably did not want to tell me about it because of the previous argument that we had with each other. Later the next morning, Peter brought up the topic of Nicole's school again, and it became obvious that he was what Peter was hiding. I told him not to help with Nicole's fees, reminding him about our financial situation and Nicole's extravagant way of living. He assured me that he'd made sure her fees were paid this time around, but I didn't budge, despite knowing another argument was brewing, and to my surprise, Peter began to beg me to reconsider, and my anger was replaced with confusion. And like I did when it came to the topic of selling the house, I told my husband I would think about it. It was unsettling to see my husband look and sound so desperate, and I called Nicole as soon as I got off work. She finally answered after calling the third time, and I asked what she told Peter that made him want to pay her college fees. A lot of reasons had gone through my head, but I needed Nicole to hear it from her. She told me that she had told Peter that she needed the money, and that he had promised to pay. Well, I called her out immediately, telling her to tell the truth if she didn't want my parents to know what she did with their money. Well, I guess that got to her because she hurried up and told me that she was telling the truth, after reminding me very rudely that Peter could do whatever he wanted as an adult and that the head of his household. She ended the call. Believe me when I say that I was tempted to call one of my parents and report Nicole to them, but I shook off the anger, reminded myself that I was more mature than that. Besides, as annoying as my sister was, I did not want to get her into trouble with my parents. All I had to do was talk some sense into Peter. Well, my plan failed. When Peter came home late that evening and went straight to bed again, he seemed tired, and as urgent as the matter was, I did not have the heart to wake him up. But I found myself scrolling through his phone this time a few minutes later and saw that his chats with Nicole were almost non-existent. I had thought that they would have at least discussed my sister's college fees via text message. My quick search then became a thorough one, and one I now wish I had not done. Strap your seatbelts in. I suppose all the replies under my first post about my husband being unfaithful had some truth to it. I saw nude pictures of Nicole on his phone yesterday, and I can't unsee it. I don't even know what to think, much less what to do. I got up early the next morning and left, feeling numb on my way to work, and I'm now sitting alone in front of my workplace, wondering if I should talk to my parents about this or confront my husband and Nicole. I can't believe Peter let 10 years of our marriage go down the drain like it was nothing. To make matters worse, my sister was the cause of it. Nicole was mostly like the woman that he had gotten the jewelry for, and her college fees were most likely the reason he wanted to sell the house. Then there was coming back late into the night to worry about, and am I overthinking this too, or are my thoughts finally crystal clear? I don't know anymore. I'm so confused, angry, and in pain that I'm not thinking clearly. I think I'll stay with my parents tonight, and I'm not sure I can bear the sight of Peter this soon. I'm also unsure of what to do, but I'll update you once I find out anything else. Update number 2. I'm beyond happy to report that my husband is still as faithful as he was all throughout our marriage, and that my manipulative sister was going to get what was coming to her. Peter came to me to get me a taxi in the morning after I had gone to stay with my parents, and I did not want to cause a scene in front of my already suspicious father, so I went with him. He didn't say anything throughout the drive, and I thought that he had perceived that I was not in the mood to chit-chat. But when we got home, he asked if I had gone through his phone, and I absolutely exploded. Then insulting him and calling him names, and Peter was surprisingly calm about it, which made worse, and, because I wished that he had argued with me and denied the accusations, but he just tried to apologize. But I was not having any of it. I left my house to stay with one of my colleagues, who reminded me that she had told me how much of a womanizer my husband was. I decided to return home after reading a text from Peter. Peter promised to reveal answers as soon as I got home. I wanted to understand why those pictures of my sister, of all people, were right there on his phone, and despite what my colleague advised, I went to meet Peter. The truth was the last thing I would have thought of, and I was so glad I had at least heard my husband out, because I would have ruined my marriage because of a misunderstanding. That's right. The first thing I asked on getting home was why Peter had finally decided to give me an explanation. Peter had told me that his worst fear had become a reality, so he had no reason to hide anything. He was close to losing me for good, despite all his efforts to prevent that from happening, and after a very lengthy discussion, I found out that Nicole, my sister, had been blackmailing my husband for months and sending him nudes just to extort him and cause problems within the marriage. She had begun her blackmail with an audio recording of herself and my husband and had clipped it in such a way that the listener would believe Peter was actively chasing her. I thought Peter was bluffing when he told me all this, and I asked why he did not tell me that he was being blackmailed. He told me that Nicole had threatened to put on an act in front of my entire family, telling them Peter had asked for her pictures if he told anyone the truth. I told him I would have believed him because I trusted him with everything. But he smiled and told me to be honest with myself, and when I calmed down to think about it, I realized Peter was right. I might have trusted Peter at first, but there was a high chance that my overthinking would have gotten the better of me. Either that or my parents would have taken one form of action or the other. No matter what happened, our marriage was in trouble. I asked if that was why he deleted the message with Nicole. He told me yes. Even said Nicole had crafted her messages in such a way that would remove most of the suspicion from her. I've always known my sister was manipulative, but I wondered just how bad it was for her to be able to remove all suspicion from her, even via text messages. The doubt slowly crept in, but I kept it to myself. If I had said anything, I would have proven Peter right. I told him I still had a few questions to ask, and he appeared more than ready to answer them all. It was after this that I knew that Peter was indeed telling me the truth. I asked who he had gotten the jewelry for, and he confessed it was for Nicole. Without being prompted, he told me that she had asked for a few other things, which was why he was spending excessively. He apologized for doing so, telling me that he felt horrible anytime he spent money he knew we needed. Peter even had an answer for why he was returning late at night, and after our discussion about selling the house, he knew that I would not want to let go of our home. So he went around asking for a few people's help right after working hours because he could not afford to provoke Nicole into taking action by being nonchalant. Peter said he had managed to gather some money to complete the college fees, and I felt so sorry for him. I could only imagine what my husband had been through these past months. He must have been constantly on edge, hoping that Nicole did not act out on whim, while praying that I did get fed up with his constant spending. Peter left me alone with my thoughts that night after I told him I needed to be alone. He slept in the living room, and I replayed everything he told me over and over in my mind, my faith in my husband increasing as I affirmed that he was being truthful. Peter used to be jovial whenever Nicole came over in the past, always playing with her and flirting every once in a while, but recently he always seemed nervous, downcast whenever Nicole was mentioned or whenever he saw her. A few days ago, when the thought occurred to me, I believed it was because he was hiding his perverted nature from me. But it was because he was afraid I would become suspicious. Peter was right, and once again I was astounded by how manipulative Nicole could be. All because it was no news that my husband was a flirt. She had used it against him and had almost succeeded in ruining the marriage. It did not take long before I get angry. I mean, what reason did she have to do something like this? We weren't the best of sisters, but that was no reason to resort to blackmailing my husband. My anger and frustration have worn off now, and all I can think about is how I'll get back at my sister. She's going to regret ever messing with my husband and my marriage. Update number 3. Well, the morning after my husband's confession, I made sure to make Peter a hearty breakfast. He deserved it, and I was going to get justice for what Nicole had put him through. So, it did not take long to come up with a plan, and I was eager to give my sister a taste of her own medicine. Over the weekend, I told Peter to tell Nicole that he would not be giving her the money that she asked for. I'll admit that my request was quite ridiculous, and my husband's reaction reflected my thoughts. He told me that he could easily lose face before my parents if Nicole went ahead with her threats. But after reassuring him, he went on to make a call to Nicole. The only difference between the calls that he had with her in the past and the ones that he was about to make up was that they would be recorded. A few minutes after my husband's call with Nicole, she called me, sounding like she had cried a river. She told me to meet her at my parents' house in an hour because she had something important to tell me and my family. I felt like an actress in a drama when ensuring that the right amount of shock and confusion was in my voice. My husband and I left within the next hour in a taxi, and I made sure to suppress my excitement while calming my agitated husband down. Nicole was already at my parents' when we got there, and true to her word, she had succeeded in turning my parents against Peter. My dad grabbed Peter right by the collar as soon as he walked in, spitting in his face while shouting profanities. I begged him to calm down and tell me what angered him so much. Well, he told me that Peter had been asking Nicole to send nudes. After telling them that Nicole was simply lying, I proceeded to tell my parents to listen to the voice recording Peter had on his phone. I had initially planned to lengthen the entire ordeal, but after seeing the murderous look on my father's face, I decided against it. Nicole's teary face had morphed into one of shock as the recording echoed into the house, and she began to beg my parents even before it ended. I knew it would be hard to convince my parents to believe that my husband was innocent, so I made sure Nicole confessed of her act herself. My parents apologized to Peter swiftly and asked Nicole what she did with the money that she was given for her college fees. That was the only reason I came to my parents' house in the first place. I needed to know what had pushed Nicole into such a blackmail of Peter. She confessed that she had spent all of it to pay off a debt that she had. It turned out Nicole drunkenly damaged some cars that she rented out and had no money to pay it. She was scared of getting arrested and resorted to blackmailing my husband after exhausting the money my parents had given her. Honestly, it sounded almost as ridiculous as blackmailing my husband. I mean, what was a student who was supposed to be studying doing with a car that she could not afford? Did college students typically do this, or was my sister one of a kind? Me and my husband left after her confession because I had no interest in hearing anything else. I could tell Nicole was being her casual, usual, carefree self, which was what I landed her in trouble with. For a moment, I felt bad for my sister, but when I remembered what she did to Peter because of her carelessness, my sympathy lessened. I was sure my parents would punish her for her ridiculous actions, and she deserved it after all. Update number 4. Final conclusion. I've come to learn that Nicole is withdrawn from college. She was failing her classes, and Dad saw no reason to spend his money anymore. He sounded quite heartbroken over the phone, to be honest, and I got upset over Nicole's bad decisions again. Also, my parents ensured that Nicole worked to pay the debt off, that she returned everything to Peter, and, well, gave him the item equivalent in cash. Peter had protested it at first, but my parents talked him into it. I have not spoken to Nicole ever since, and I don't plan to unless she apologizes to me and Peter. So until that happens, I'll wish her the best of luck from a distance. Okay, so that was a whirlwind. I do have some comments from the end of the story, and these comments got a lot of attention. Let's jump into comment number 1. The situation described, it sounds extremely convoluted. While Peter has provided an explanation, there's still parts to the story that do not add up. For instance, why did he not involve law enforcement the moment he was being literally blackmailed? It's concerning that instead of addressing the situation on head and informing you, he's allowed the problem to escalate to this point. Trust is an integral part of a relationship, and both Peter and Nicole have severely betrayed your trust. It's essential to be sure that Peter's version of events holds up before completely trusting his narrative. Comment number 2. The emotional strain and pain that you're going through are palpable. Relationships are very complex, and people sometimes make poor decisions under pressure. Peter was trapped in a very challenging situation where he feared he would lose absolutely everything. His hesitation to bring the matter up can be seen as him trying to protect your marriage from collapsing. It's essential to consider counseling just to help navigate this challenging time and heal. And the final comment says this: buckle your seatbelts up, guys. While it's evident that Nicole played a significant role in this chaos, it's crucial to not absolve Peter entirely. Even if under blackmail, his actions and decisions reflect and lack a transparency and possible misunderstanding of the foundations of your relationship. Your marriage has been severely tested, and both parties have room for introspection. It's not just about placing blame, but understanding where things went wrong and ensuring they don't happen again. So guys, hearing those 3 comments, which by the way were the 3 most popular comments in the update section, let me know which one you agree with most. Drop it downstairs in our comment section. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll catch you in the next one. Just remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya.